always respond to feedback forms honestly. And I think, and maybe this is not always the case, but I think if a company or an individual is asking you for feedback, that they're probably monitoring or tracking that information. And if you have feedback to give, that's probably very valuable to them, or they wouldn't ask. So this may stem from like my own insecurities, but to me, feedback is my most valuable resource, right? So not just in business, I literally do this probably so much that it's actually annoying. I do this to my kids and even my husband, like, what's one thing I could do better as a mom? Or tell me one thing I could work on. And now the way that I handle feedback is, privately, that's a totally different story. But do I value it? 100%. So I think it's important to be reciprocal of this approach. And if someone is asking for feedback, I think you should give it honestly. Now, if someone is not asking for feedback, I think it's really important to ask for permission to give feedback, not just because it's polite, but because they may not be ready or be in an open space to receive that feedback, in which case it's just a total waste of time and could jeopardize your relationship. And this is something that my kids actually taught me, because I'm always like so proud of my kids' achievements and accomplishments, but I also have unrealistic expectations and I'm always looking for ways to improve. So I tend to think like everyone else is also looking for ways to improve, which is not always the case. So I've learned to ask my kids, like after they wrap up a rehearsal or a practice and we're talking about it, like how it went, I've trained myself to pause and say, well, are you open to feedback? And sometimes they'll roll their eyes and say like, okay, yeah. And sometimes they'd flat out or like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, they're tapped out or I need to tread lightly. But I don't ever think it's productive to just push coaching or feedback on someone that's not even open to receiving it. And of course, I'm guilty of doing it regardless, just like I think every parent is. But I think it's important to be conscious of that in parenting, in marriage, in business, in managing a team, or in coaching others. So after about 6 years of being in business, I started hosting workshops and teaching at conferences and trying to teach our process, our business strategies to other photographers. So we built courses and did webinars so that photographers could work at their own pace, but try and learn how to deliver more than just the digitals to their clients and become more profitable in their business as a result. And then we found that there was a percentage of those photographers that would learn all the things, but then they would just freeze up or get stuck because they simply just didn't want to get good at sales or take the time to have those long sales appointments at night. And it's not that they weren't capable, it was just that they prioritized other things or they lost the desire to focus specifically on learning sales. And honestly, for years, we would get asked, like, can you just come do it for me? Can you do the sales for us? And I always casually laugh that off. But finally, we decided to give it a shot and see if we could just replicate our sales strategies and our processes. Could we essentially create a done-for-you service for photographers so that they don't have to learn sales or take time away from their family, but they could still walk away with more profit in their pocket and a more meaningful experience for their clients because they're actually getting these tangible products to relive their memories every day on their walls and not just become forgotten about or lost on their phone. And that idea really took off, and it wasn't long before one photographer would be telling their other photographer friends about what we were able to do for them, and that ripple effect just kind of grew. And so now we have a team of 10 full-time team members and a handful of other support staff, so we can partner with photographers all over the country. I do believe that having some sense of routine or structure to your day is important, but I've never been good at mastering a routine consistently. And I know that that's what they tell you, like every successful entrepreneur has to master in order to reach their full potential. And I know all the benefits of waking up at 5 a.m. and 30 grams of protein and exercise, chug the water, sauna, cold plunge, gratitude journal, creative work, midday workout, a million supplements. And all of that sounds amazing. And there are days when I do actually follow all the things. And of course, I feel great. And at that time, I'm like, this is how I have to live every day. But I also know that my creative soul needs change. And ever since I was a kid, like I would secretly rearrange all the furniture in my bedroom or sneak down to the basement to find a random can of paint that I could redecorate my entire room just for a change in environment. I am messy and I get distracted and my ambitions ebb and flow, and I routinely get hooked on this killer path going a million miles a minute, and then I need to take some downtime to just not work on any projects for a while or just like day drink on the boat with my husband. And for years I tried to beat myself up about my inability to be the person that you see all over Instagram measuring their macros or precision timing their mornings, and think like, I'll never be that, so I'll never have that. But the truth is, becoming the best version of yourself is being able to identify the moments where you are being your best and being able to identify the moments of intense productivity and ambition, but also recognizing that this is also my mind. They might need to take a 2-week vacation to the BVIs to recover, or at least that's what I convinced my husband I need. I have a pet peeve of people ordering at a restaurant using language like, I'm gonna get and I have no idea where this came from or why it bothers me, but I've taught my children to order at a restaurant by saying, may I have? And this may sound like over the top, but I think maybe it stems from my personal belief that we should be respectful to anyone in the service industry, from the people that clean the floor all the way to the CEO. I think it just sounds rude and entitled to say, I'm gonna get. And I know most servers probably don't even notice this, and I don't even know at which point in my life this pet peeve started. And honestly, it feels even a little embarrassing to admit this, because I think most people, it's just not a big deal. But to me, I think the way that you speak to people is really important. I am a huge believer in replaying scenarios in your head or rewatching your recordings of your interactions with your clients, even if it feels super cringy or lame, because if you take that time to really reflect on every situation, every sales opportunity, and answer a few questions, you will instantly start to notice your average drastically increasing. So I ask myself, like, what went well? What did not go well? Or what should I have done differently? What is one thing I'm going to change right now or try different this very next time? And I know it sounds silly and simple, but truly those questions take very little time, whether you're just jotting them out or discussing them out loud with your spouse or your business partner. These simple questions after every client interaction will create so much momentum in your business. Most people think sales is about having the perfect wording or the perfect responses to difficult questions, but it's actually just about listening to everything and responding in the fewest amount of words as possible while making the clients feel heard and understood. And when a client starts to ask a difficult question, we freeze up before we even allow ourselves to hear them out, and we start to panic, and our mind stops listening to what's happening over here, and it hops on this hamster wheel of, how am I going to respond to this? And we start to freak out, and our body language reflects that. And so we spend so much time just blabbering about what we don't realize is most of the time at that point, the client's completely checked out. They've lost interest, and you've completely lost them, and they've lost their trust in you. I probably have some trauma to work through here, but when my husband and I first started dating, we graduated college and he got the better job right off the bat. And I think that kind of is what I expected. Like, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad was always like the primary provider financially. So initially, I think I just like expected to fall into the same pattern of like, eventually we would have kids and I would be like a stay-at-home mom and he'll go and have this like big impressive job in finance. What I didn't realize was how unfulfilled I felt by not having any career goals or something that was like challenging me professionally. So after having my kids, I really struggled with this, because every time I had these feelings of wanting something more, I would beat myself up because I would convince myself that that was like unnatural, to feel like being a mom and providing for my children wasn't enough. That was like the best job in the world. It's like the most honorable position anyone can hold. So why wasn't it enough for me? How could I possibly need more than that? What was wrong with me? So initially, this was like a huge shift in our marriage, and learning how to co-parent and find new roles and find space to find gratitude for my time home with my kids, but also find my creative outlet in building a business at night. And then as we started to take off, there was this whole new set of obstacles of like, who was going to run to school pickup and who was going to take care of the laundry and who needed to answer work emails or attend networking events. And to me, it felt like this weird tug of war for a while, but looking back, I think it was actually just like all in my head, and it was an internal struggle of like, I need to be this Pinterest perfect mom, but I also really want to be this like badass boss that shows my kids I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. And I think this really, really bothers me because I think there's so much stigma around working moms or women who run businesses that support their spouse. Like her success is only because she has her husband. And the worst part is that internal struggle is trying to play both parts, thinking you have to do them both with 100% peak performance. It's like difficult enough as it is, but now we have these outside forces pressuring us, like high grossing businesses run by women. Oh, well, that's just greedy. Or mastering the art of negotiation as a female, well, that's just like deceitful and undermining. Or like we don't have time to volunteer as the drama club chaperone or the class mom. It's just like, oh, she must be totally checked out or she doesn't care. But you don't see dads with businesses get that kind of scrutiny. And that same level of success, whether it's in business or in the home, is measured completely differently for men and women. And I believe that that needs to change. Now, thankfully, I have the most supportive husband. And so every time that I started to kind of like reach for more, despite this internal and external voices telling me otherwise, he was always like, yeah, let's get it. And even when I would doubt myself or come up with some like crazy wild business idea that anyone in their right mind would completely shut down, he was always like, okay, yeah, like let's do it. And now that he's grown more accustomed to my nonstop business ideas, he asks a few more questions about the plan before he fully gets on board. But he's still far more supportive than I'd ever expect him to be, which is really awesome. So all business owners are a little bit of a hot mess under the hood, and we all need help. We all need support systems. And if those support systems can provide some sort of consistency and stability to our business, we will not only be way more profitable, but our clients will feel more well taken care of. And that's exactly what we do for photographers. The biggest mistake that I see business owners make when trying to grow their business is just completely missing the mark when it comes to closing the deal. And I think the first thing we have to remember is it's not about you, right? It's about meeting your clients where they're at and really listening to their desires and making a recommendation based on their deepest desires. And most photographers or creatives just get so caught up. We get so caught up in our heads or our own insecurities about our work or what it's worth, and we just lose focus on actually serving our clients in a more meaningful way. 90% of the time, people that spend versus the people that are stingy is a complete opposite of what you think. So stop judging what you think they can or cannot afford.